Well, it's the Jack and Joe show, and we're coming off a first victory at home since December the 5th. Not only that, Joe Sansom, but arguably the best performance of the season so far. How are you?
Very, very good. Apologies in advance. I've been plunged into darkness on one side of my face because the sun is out. I've tried my best to mitigate it. I apologize, but ultimately it sums up my mood right now. It's sunny outside. I'm in a very happy mood because of Fulham. And yeah, I mean, I agree with you, Jack. I think that was our best performance of the season. Following up a cup victory, following up a surprising win at Newcastle United, based on what I think everyone was sort of anticipating going into that game. And now we've got a few games in a row, which are really, really exciting, both in the league and the cup. And really good time to be a Fulham fan, Jack.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I spoke last week on my Patreon about this next month, and that being from the Forest game until the Spurs game, or after the Spurs game. And I said it's the most important month of the season so far by a clear mile, and that's to do with where we can progress in the league and where we can progress in the cup. And we've got off to an absolute flyer. I mean, a lot of narrative before this game, and I know we didn't speak last week, but we speak now, was about can Fulham at home break down a low block of three or a four or a five? And we saw it be a sort of a five from Forest, then switching to a four. And not only did we break them down, we created probably the most chances we've created all season. Should have scored, and I'm not exaggerating, we could have scored 7 or 8 goals in this game if it weren't for Matt Sells and it weren't for a couple of blocks, the one on the Traore shot and a couple of other opportunities. Every single chance we created, I would argue, was a good one, where we tested the keeper or we headed it just wide or it was blocked. There was no wastefulness about sort of the chance we had because all of those headers were. It wasn't like we blazed one over from 10 yards out or wildly hit shots off target. These are all very quite close to the goal or on target, and it just felt as if every time we were going to go forward, we were going to score. And Adama Traore had his best. I said this on Monday. It was his best performance since he's been in England playing football. So either at Borough or either at Wolves, either at Villa or either at Fulham. Maybe Wolves fans will disagree. He was there for quite a long time and had a couple of decent performances. He scored twice at Manchester City. But overall game was brilliant. Absolutely fantastic. Sasha Lukic, impeccable. And Calvin Bassey, despite making a bit of a mistake for the first goal and the Wood getting the wrong side of him, Joe, came up with the goods to win the game. From your perspective in the Hammersmith end, how was the game? Because the atmosphere as well was probably as good as I've heard it this season.
Yeah, I was about to say, I think that the performance from the fans in the stands really mirrored the performance on the pitch. I definitely thought that one of the better atmospheres all season, which sort of came out of nowhere because often at 3 p.m. on a Saturday, the cottage is a little bit sleepier than in a night game, for example. But I think that the stands sort of fed off the intensity of the way that Fulham started the game, the speed with which we were attacking, the tenaciousness of our midfield to win balls back in midfield. You know, we were first to every second ball, I thought, throughout the entire 90 minutes on Saturday, which was great to see. Obviously, a fantastic celebration day, uh, the way that it was observed by both sets of fans as well. I do honestly think that plays a part to atmosphere. Almost everyone's sort of feeling a little bit emotional potentially from that. It's a great initiative and it was well observed again. But Jack, the performance was great. You've called out two of the main guys there in Adama Traore and Lukic. I thought they both had perfect games. Adama very unlucky not to get on the score sheet. Lukic as well with the effort in the second half where he cut inside Danilo and then forced a great save out of Matt Sells just before he went 2-1 up. It was everything that I love to see from every player on the pitch, really, from a Fulham perspective. Um, and obviously also great from Lukic's perspective that was his third game in a row without a booking. So he's still avoiding that tightrope, just about getting his 10th booking and being out for 2 games because the balance in midfield was perfect. I massively, massively, massively recommend going on to YouTube. and taking a look at the Cottage Tacticos video breakdown of the game, of how it was a chess match between Nuno and Marcus Silva. And there's some really interesting insights because, like you say, Jack, we all knew what we were coming up against, the five at the back that they've shifted to since that Bournemouth game where they lost 5-0. And myself, my dad, and all the guys that sit around me in H7 were all saying before the game, if we get the first goal here, we could try and take the game to them like Bournemouth did. We're not saying we're going to replicate a 5-0 scoreline, but that is the antithesis of teams they like to play against. If you can get that first goal and they have to come out of their shell a bit more and they're not just playing on the counter-attack, they struggle. And we really proved that on the weekend. We didn't deserve to be going in level at half-time, although I thought it was a great bit of skill by Wood. As much as the defending was poor, I know it deflected as well. It was just clinical from him, but it really was a bit of a fuck up by our defenders. To be honest, it was very soft, and it was unlike what we saw from the rest of the game, which was just fantastic and nullifying Forest to minimal, I would say even dangerous attacking play, let alone chance creation. And I've got to say, it's probably one of my favourite games of the season. Potentially my favourite. I loved that it was so merited. I loved some of the cameos off the bench in Muniz and Sessegnon and the returning Willian. There was so much to love, but we need to follow it up now with another win. To me, I would have taken 4 points from Forest and Palace. I would have done, probably expecting the point to come against Forest, in all honesty, based on how they've played this season. Now I think we need to follow it up with 3 points against Palace, who are a side that are better away from Selhurst Park this season. They haven't lost a game away from home in quite a while. Taking some decent scalps in that time, and just being clinical. So a game I'm really excited to see. But after that performance on the weekend, Jack, no reason to fear them. And if we can follow any of our next sort of 4 or 5 games up with the same performance we saw on Saturday, we'll be leaving with the points, or if it's against United, with a win.
Absolutely. That I think that is the blueprint. And it's nice because we've got back-to-back home games Saturday to Saturday, i.e. time to prepare and time to get ready. And I just feel as though you obviously cannot replicate the exact same performance against Forest, but if we went in with the same sort of intensity, philosophy, and obviously we saw the incredible identity of Fulham on the pitch on Saturday and how we like to play. If we would do that again, and because we're at home, we should be able to take the game to any opposition. Doesn't really matter who it is. So it didn't surprise me when we started on the front foot against Forest. It just surprised me at how easy it was to create chances and also stifle their breakaway options as well, with Elanga and Gibbs White and even Murillo, who went on one marauding run. But if it wasn't for Adama, he might have got away and further up the pitch. So Crystal Palace is going to be, I think, a tricky game. I mean, they've got good players who can hurt any opposition. Eze's now back from injury, and he came on at the weekend. You're right that they are really good away from home, and they're really poor at Selhurst Park at the moment. Jean-Philippe Mateta is now turning into what I believe is a proper Premier League striker. Nketiah can't really get a look in at the moment, and he was the sort of marquee signing in the summer with Lacroix and Chalobah. Chalobah's also gone back to Chelsea, and Lacroix is still in that back three. They've got Mitchell on the left and Munoz on the right, so it's going to be quite similar in the way that they line up in terms of formation than it was against Forest, over 3 with wing backs, and then sort of I think they'll be playing that sort of 2 in the middle and maybe two in the middle and then 2 behind, 1 striker. It could be sort of a Christmas tree formation that they might alter it depending on how many midfielders they want in the middle of the park. Lerma and obviously Hughes in centre mid, but they've also got Wharton, who's coming back as well from injury. They've got some nice players off the bench like Esse, and Ismail Assar might start. Devaney's also been playing as well because he's had to fill in for injuries. Obviously, Mark Gahey, very, very good. Look, they've got a good team and they've got a good squad, and I think this is going to be a good game of football. And the last 2 times they've come here, they've made things very, very difficult at the Cottage, and we've drawn both times. But ignoring all of that and all the personnel that they have and all the personnel that Forest had, if we were to stamp the authority with, I would go the exact same 11, the exact same sort of targeting of Traore on Mitchell this time, because It was so interesting how we're so used to seeing Fulham attack down the left early on, and we didn't see that much at all in the first half. It was definitely more coming down the right hand side, and that was for a reason, because Williams was getting targeted, and Williams, we both agree, is just not a very, very good defender. I think Mitchell is a decent defender, but I think he can be got at. Adama Traore is, very, very much stronger than basically anyone you'd come up against on the pitch, and I would back him to get the better of. And there's no stopping him. It's not like Glasner's not going to sit down the team today in their team meeting ahead of this game and go, right, well, Mitchell, you've really got to be on it in terms of Adama Traore, because he will just put a ball past you and he will beat you for pace because he's just that good. The only way you could probably stifle Adama Traore is doubling up on him, but suddenly that's dragging a centre-back out of position. Then you've got to be wary of the left-hand side where you've got Iwobi and Robinson, and suddenly that leaves like one centre-back in the middle. And obviously that's going to create incredible gaps. If they were to double up on Traore and get a centre-back sort of over and to try and stop the cross, then suddenly the pocket for Smith Rowe is going to open up, and that's going to be a real opportunity for him to create. So there's so much opportunity for Fulham here to get in behind Palace the way we did against Forest, create chances. Raul in the middle has been fantastic, and I would really back Fulham to get a result here. And the reason I say that, and the reason I'm sort of focusing so much on Fulham and not the opposition, is because of the way we played on Saturday. I think if we'd have played like that against 90% of the Premier League teams in the Premier League, I think we would have blown them away the way we did Forest, albeit we only scored 2 goals. We should have scored more. But if it wasn't for great goalkeeping, we would have scored so many more goals in that game. Joe, how do you see it going against Crystal Palace? And obviously, we've got to be wary of the threats they have on the break. Just because Forest didn't create much doesn't mean that Palace won't.
Absolutely, and also Palace will have now seen how we played against Forest, which was very slightly different in terms of really pushing our 2 8s in Lukic and Smith Rowe really, really wide. And again, I recommend watching that YouTube video because really interesting how he was basically just making Danilo just run from side to side, trying to cover all the ground that Anderson and Gibbs-White couldn't, because they were pressing slightly further forward and stopping our centre-backs and full-backs having options to play through the lines. There's so many similarities, you could say, in terms of system from Crystal Palace from what we saw against Forest, in terms of the 3 at the back with 2 wing backs, one slightly more attacking in Munoz on the right versus Williams that we saw on the left for Forest the other day. Mitchell and Aina being the slightly more reserved of the 2 full-backs, wing-backs, I should say, getting forward slightly less, but still offering a threat going forward. I know a lot of Palace fans are frustrated by Mitchell's end product, which sort of reminds me of Fulham fans' opinion of Robinson until, I would say, last season. Weirdly, I know it's something that's improved a lot with his game. His athleticism and quality has never been in doubt, but maybe the final ball's improved a lot. Mateta having a good season as Chris Wood is, not as good, but very, very good, would be a good asset to most teams in this league. And then Sarr, I feel like really fulfilling a similar role to what we'll have seen from Alanga on the weekend, where he's basically a wide forward that can come more centrally and try and run in behind. So a lot of similarities. We have the benefit of going against a team of lesser quality this season than Forest. In terms of personality, I think they're very similar. Eze was on the bench against Everton on the weekend. I imagine he'll come back into the starting 11 for this one, and obviously fulfills a similar role to what Gibbs-White does for Forest. And like I say, Eze is an exciting signing for them from Millwall. Didn't get any action actually on the weekend, which was interesting. But someone that did is Ben Chilwell, who they've signed on loan. And with Mitchell having a poorer game on the weekend, I do wonder if potentially he can come in from the start. I doubt it, based on the amount of football he's played and how much of an ever-present Mitchell has been for that Palace team. But ultimately, we should be winning this game for our aspirations of Europe. I do think it's going to be tricky. I absolutely do, especially with their away form. But after what I saw on the weekend, Jack, I completely agree. I'm very, very confident. And my prediction for this game is a 2-1 Fulham win. I feel like we don't really keep clean sheets at home, no matter how much we reduce the other side to chances. But I'm expecting us to get a couple of goals with the way we played. I love the fact that we were less reliant on our left-hand side of Robinson and Iwobi. Gibbs-White was basically told sit on Robinson, and we sort of said, okay, fine, we'll go down the right-hand side then. And Adama against Williams was a mismatch. I'm not going to go in on Williams. because I think that he's a
You
good
already have.
player. I think that in a five at the back, I think that I think he's a terrible defender. I think he's a terrible defender. I think that he's a very good forward player, but that was a mismatch that I very much enjoyed watching on the weekend from Fulham's benefit. If he's up against Mitchell, I think that's a harder test. If he's up against Chilwell, it's another player that likes getting forward. How solid are they defensively? I'm less sure, and they've had less football. I'm predicting a 2-1 Fulham win, Jack, and I agree with your lineup. We don't really have to go over it because
No.
I'd go completely unchanged. Completely agree.
My one worry was that I basically went into Saturday thinking, right, if Lukic gets booked, fine. He's out for Palace, he's out for Wolves. It was inevitable he's going to miss 2 games. Now, if he gets a yellow on Saturday, he's out of the Man United game. If he gets a yellow against Wolves, he's out of the Man
Oh,
United game. Is that true?
I actually don't think he's. I actually don't think he's out for the Man United game. Luckily, just because it's an accumulation rather than two
Oh,
yellows. So, for example,
fantastic.
I feel like Polina did it once and then was fined for the cup. Yeah, so like Polina, when he got 2 yellows and had to miss the Arsenal and Brentford games in the league, but was able to play against Leeds before that in the
And
cup
he scored. That's a great point then.
and he
Okay, so
scored.
Lukic won't be out of the FA Cup game by hook or by crook unless he's
Unless he gets a
injured,
straight
which
red.
actually, yeah, that's true
Yeah.
as well. He obviously came off injured. Marco said it probably doesn't look anything serious. We'll find out more on Friday when we speak to him on Friday. But um, yeah, it's so interesting, isn't it? So just to clarify the point, if Lukic gets booked, he'll be out of 2 Premier League games. So if he gets one in the
Yeah.
next one, he'll be out of Wolves and Brighton. So we'll just see. It's so interesting that the feeling amongst the fan base after the defeat to Man United compared to the feeling after 2 Premier League wins and an FA Cup win at Newcastle, Wigan, and now Nottingham Forest. The mood in the fan base is as high as it's been so far this season. There's a real feel of momentum behind us and a real feel that you look at some of the fixtures and you fancy us. Um, I literally just sat down for my Patreon and did a 40-minute podcast on what I think will happen for the rest of the Premier League season. And well, I might as well tell you, I have a feeling that Fulham will finish in the top 8. I put us finishing 8th, and that was me underestimating Fulham. In fact, my true feelings are that I think we can finish beyond and higher than that. But I was erring on the side of caution because that's just who I am, and that's just what I did. What I did say was I think that Bournemouth are going to finish in the Champions League places, which is an insane take. Not really
Wow.
that insane,
Okay.
actually. They genuinely could. You look at their fixtures they've got coming up compared to Forest's. Forest have got some really tricky games coming up, and Bournemouth's next 5 are all very, very winnable. And the way they play, even without their 2 strikers who are still injured, I want them to get in the Champions League because I think they deserve it. They've been brilliant, and wouldn't like what a rise that would have been. From League Two where they were basically on the brink of out of the Football League to up to the Premier League in 2015 and some success, and then they went down and they came back to get into the Champions League under Iriola. Champions League football at Vitality. I know we're not. This is not a Bournemouth podcast, but that was my thinking, and I think that Forest can be got at by most teams, and I think that they'll drop out. I still think Forest will get Europe, but anyway, Joe. So we both agree on a team, an 11, and did you say a score prediction 2-1 Fulham?
Yeah, 2-1.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with. You know what? I think I'm gonna go 3-1. In fact, I might go 3-0, and
Nice.
that's quite punchy. That relies
Punchy.
on us to keep a
Yeah.
clean sheet. Jason Punchy, um, who's a former Palace player, of course. Anyway, 3-0 Fulham. I think if we create almost half the chances we did against Forest, we'll still create a lot of chances. Hopefully, we can put them more away. I don't necessarily think that Henderson is a better keeper than Sells. I think Henderson is a good keeper, but I think we can beat him a couple of times. Palace, I'm not underestimating Palace. I know they're a good team, especially away from home. They've got their threats. But I really have some confidence that Joachim Andersen can keep a second clean sheet against his former team this season, and we can do the double over another team, which would be fantastic, Joe.
Yeah, I'm also nervous from this game from a personal perspective about the tweets that I put out after we beat Palace in November, because I was fishing for interactions after all the sort of debate about Anderson joining Fulham. I don't think Anderson's been great the last month, but I thought he was much, much, much improved on the weekend. And to be honest, from half time of that Newcastle game, he was great in the second half. And then he was very good on Saturday. I agree with you, Jack. I mean, there is a prospect that if we play like we did the other day, this could be a very convincing win. Um, you know, I really hope that we do see it. I really, really do. But just on your point on Bournemouth, by the way, I completely agree. And I think the difference that I see between Bournemouth and Nottingham Forest, for example, who are both like us, punching above their weight in the European places, Bournemouth slightly lower at this point in time, is when we played Bournemouth, I felt like we were second best throughout the entire game, apart from maybe a 15, 20-minute spell in the second half when we'd
Mhm.
just gone 2-1 up. And I thought we were lucky to escape with a point. And I put the difference between that and the Forest at home game, just it was chalk and cheese. We dominated them, and I felt it was quite a routine away display as well. A bit of a nothing game, but once we went ahead, it was reasonably comfortable. Whereas when we head to the Vitality in April, I'm expecting a massively tough game, and that's regardless of where the two teams are at that point in time. If it's like a 6-pointer for European
Yeah.
qualification, I think that Forest are a more solid team. I think that Bournemouth are a better team, and I think that over the course of the season that will show in their final league position. I think, like you said, Jack, they've already got through the majority of their tough fixtures on paper. Of Bournemouth,
Mhm.
they had a horrible run around the time that they were playing us. Just after that, when they went to Stamford Bridge, they went to St James's Park. They had Liverpool. They've still got a few tough games to come, of course. We've still got just under about a third of the season left. But I massively back them to finish in a European position, and that would be fantastic for the club and for the town. Um, I do think after Saturday that hopefully a few of the players have instilled a bit more belief in themselves that we can do it as well. It's such an amazing opportunity for us. A Conference League place would be unbelievable. It's a real, real, real chance. Forget about the European Tour aspect. It's a chance of a trophy because on paper we should be better than the majority of the teams in that competition. We're nowhere near the latter stages of the tournament, and Chelsea have got it sewn up pretty much. You just know that they're probably going to win it this year
Yeah.
based on how easy they found it so far, playing a fully rotated team. That could be us. Obviously, we don't have a fully rotated team to play, but if we play our first 11, I'd back us to get through the tournament and do similar to what West Ham did a couple of years ago. So massive
That would
opportunity,
be
and I hope the
incredible.
players see every game as a cup final, starting with Palace this Saturday, and then Wolves to follow shortly afterwards on Tuesday. If we could get 6 points from these two games, I think it was you, Jack, or potentially it was Stroudley that pointed out that Newcastle's next two are Forest and Liverpool. There is a chance that Newcastle get 0 points from those games, or 1 point. There is also a chance to get 6 points, of course. But if
Of
we could
course.
make up some ground, suddenly we're looking above eighth.
Do you know what I've been doing in the last few weeks? Last 2 or 3 weeks, I've been watching every single Eddie Howe pre-match press conference and post-match press conference because I feel as if because the journalists are asking it every single week, and I feel like it's been reflected in what we're seeing on the pitch. All eyes were on that semi-final against Arsenal, the second leg. Hence, they dropped off against us, and now all eyes are on the final. And
Yeah,
performance levels are definitely dropping off because it's all about that day out at Wembley. And I feel like, and this is what I said in my prediction, I feel like Newcastle are going to suffer because of it, and they're going to finish ninth in the table. And that's why I picked us to finish in the European places. I feel as though Newcastle, despite if they win or lose the Carabao Cup final, have I wouldn't say eggs in one basket. And Eddie Howe, every time he's been asked about that, has disputed the point and said no, every game is a cup final for us, blah blah blah. But I just feel as though because of the feeling from the city, the fans, all that day out at Wembley, that the second chance of winning a Carabao Cup in 3 years, I think it's going to take a toll on their season. I think we can pip them, and that's my thoughts. And what was my other point as well? Yeah, I agree with you. I think that we can definitely benefit from that and pick up points in these next two games. and hopefully see us charge up the table. And then we play Brighton, of course, who will be chasing the very same thing we're chasing as well. Joe, we're not going to speak next week because we're playing Wolves on Tuesday, and then we're playing Manchester United on the Sunday. So we'll probably next speak on Jack and Joe after Manchester United. Before we talk about that, I had one more question for you about one individual player, and that's Emil Smith-Rowe. Marco Silva was speaking about him on Friday. He then went and scored on the Saturday. Have the Smith Rowe we've seen this season, is this the level of which you've expected of him when we signed him, or have you been underwhelmed or overwhelmed? Because I feel like it's sort of the level I expected to see. Quite a good goal return ish, couple of injuries, but overall I think it's been positive rather than negative.
Yeah, I think I agree. I think based on how excited I was for the signing, and I still maintain this is a great signing and he will be a crucial player for us for a number of years. I think slightly underwhelmed purely based on the fact that what we saw on Saturday is such a high level of performance that if he was to do that more regularly, I think that he's already on double figure goals and several assists as well. He's put up good numbers. He's had some fantastic performances, especially earlier in the season. Leicester, he was great. Newcastle at home. He also was fantastic at Palace away, so hopefully he can do that in the return fixture. I thought that Saturday was his best performance of the season. I think
Yeah,
that's the only reason I'm saying underwhelmed is because we know he can play like that, and I just love to see it more often. And hopefully this is a run of games for him now because he was better against Leicester, and obviously he was also very decent in the early second half against Newcastle. I feel like the confidence is returning to him. And I just hope by the end of the season we can get him to double figure goals with more assists as well, because I'd love to see that playmaking aspect a bit more. When we signed him, though, I do think that the reason we signed him was a needle mover in terms of goals coming from our midfield. And if he can get to double figures, that'd be fantastic. He's up to 5, and he's obviously missed a chunk of the season in between, the best part of a month, and then getting back up to fitness. So good run of games now where he can try and assert his dominance and hopefully complete a few 90 minutes, which he hasn't done too much this season, not necessarily his own fault. But yeah, a signing that I want to see more from. But Saturday was an absolutely fantastic performance and exactly why we signed him.
Mm. Joe, we've just been sent a tweet, and I've just clicked on it, and it says that, and it comes from what is a bronze medal source, so I'm not really too much into it. Fenerbahce are set to make a £20 million offer for Issa Diop. £20 million would be a great profit made on the transfer. And I think as much as I love Diop, I think he's upgradable, and I would absolutely probably snap your hand off for 20 million for him, and then try and upgrade that position. Albeit that is one to talk about in the summer. Joe, let's finally talk about the next 2 games then after Palace. I know it's going to be hard, but in fact, let's focus more on that United game because it's a separate competition.
Yeah.
Manchester United away, you just can't believe we drew on them. But since then, they've had a mountain of injuries. Amad Diallo out for the season. Ugate's currently out. Mainu's currently out. They're currently playing Højlund and Xerxes. Garnacho obviously is probably the main threat with Bruno Fernandes, plus their 2 strikers who have been incredibly underwhelming this season. I'm going to say I think we're going to win. I think we're going to win the tie. What about you?
Yeah, I definitely didn't think that the moment the tie was made when my head was, oh my goodness, that they're advertising those new Doritos at the moment where they're like flaming hot but hotter than hot. And it was hotter than that. I mean, it was just like Alex Scott, I will never forgive you. It's as simple as that. But now I've settled on it a little bit more. Would I rather have got United than Bournemouth, a Newcastle, a Villa? Absolutely. And we're not going to get a better chance to beat them. I'm even
Yeah.
thinking back to a couple of weeks ago, which is where my mind first went. I was thinking, well, despite how crap they've been all season, we haven't even scored a goal against them. But
Yeah.
that game at the end of January, they are now missing 2 of their best players from that day in terms of Martinez, who was the match winner, and Diallo, Amad Diallo, who obviously scored the goal in injury time, which was very tight for offside. One of their only dangerous players. He didn't have a great game that day. We're never going to get a better chance to beat them. The bench depth is horrendous. The idea of taking them to extra time, they've got no one to bring on. Højlund
Yeah.
and Xerxes in terrible form. Garnacho was absolutely stinking up the place at Tottenham the other day. He was awful. And Fernandes looks a shadow of himself right now. But it's something about playing them. We've got a terrible record, and our players seem to have a mental block. We need to get rid of that, play our strongest team, take the game to them. And I honestly think if we get the first goal, we will get through this tie. Um, I feel confident about it now. I've sort of turned my mind around the mindset. Let's forget the club we're playing. Let's look at the team we're playing, and they are awful right now. I'm in terms of the actual squad that we're playing against. I'm more confident than this game than I am for Palace or than I am for Wolves. But the competition,
Yeah,
the stage, the
yeah,
setting on the Sunday, all things that build up and turn it the other way. Do you know what I mean? But looking player for player, the two teams, this is the one I'm most confident for. I feel like it could age horribly. We've all got terrible memories of the last time we went there in the cup. Um, I'm not going there, and the reason I'm not going there because I was considering it strongly is because of the ticket price, and it would have been fantastic if the club could have put something on. They didn't. Am I surprised they didn't? No, that's a conversation for another day. But it will be on BBC on a Sunday at 4:30. I know last time I think it was ITV, but it's bringing me even more PTSD from that cup game being late on a Sunday. Um, Honestly, shiver me timbers, Jack. I'm really nervous for it, but we're not going to get a better chance to beat them. And with the prospect of getting to a quarter final where there aren't many top teams on paper left in it,
yeah.
what a story if we can get through.
One of Bournemouth and Wolves will go. One of Brighton and Newcastle will go. But it's a nauseating game because of the memories. And the thing about it is because it was such a monumental moment, 2 years ago, albeit in a quarterfinal as opposed to fifth round. It will be the narrative. It will be the talking point. I even tried to ask Marco about it on Friday, and he completely shut me down, which is completely fair enough because we had another three games before it. So he's obviously sick of it, and it's going to be one of those games where it could either go incredibly well or it's going to be same old story, and I'm going to be just super. Well, everyone's going to be super upset and disappointed. I have absolutely 100% sure. I'm 100% sure we will be the better team in the game. It's just whether we can get the win, and
Yeah,
that is a incredible thought. It's such a good opportunity, but there's something about. I know we beat them last season at Old Trafford in the Premier League, but it's just something about Man United when they need a result. They're going to get a result, and hopefully we don't let that happen. It'll be a bigger scalp because they're the holders. They're the holders of the tournament. So if we were to knock them out and get to a
yeah.
quarter final, then the sky's the limit from there. You never know what will happen. Joe, thank you so much for joining me today. This has been a really fun video, and lots of football to come, and then lots to review in 2 weeks' time. Hopefully, it's not going to be heads on Mars after United away. It's going to be heads in. We're one game away from Wembley, and we've got Preston at home to do it. You just never know.
I really hope so. Hopefully, our heads are in the torch or the Green Man or something. I don't know, because I feel like it's a huge couple of weeks for us. So we'll speak after, but in the league is one story where we've got a real chance of pushing for Europe. I think we're better than Brighton right now. I think right now we're also better than Villa, and they've signed some fantastic players in January. I'm sure they'll pick up again, but that was two unexpected points dropped in terms of the team they were playing, but also the state of the game with Ipswich having 10 men for over half the game. The fact that we managed to get the win in a harder fixture puts us slightly above them. Brighton sort of blow hot and cold, and we play them soon. So, really interesting thing. The last thing I'll say before we go, Jack, is that obviously the teams that we're fighting for Europe against, we still have to go to all of them. We have to go to Villa Park. We've got to go to the Vitality and play Bournemouth. We've got to go to the Amex to play Brighton. That's really interesting that we have been playing better away from home. We've still got to go to all of those grounds. And I'm confident that we could win at all three on our day. So let's see what happens. Enjoy. Thanks for everyone for watching, and enjoy the next couple of weeks. This is what it's about. These are big occasions for Fulham. This is what we want. Palace and Wolves, huge games in the Premier League, and then we'll follow that up with a big one at United in the Cup. So fingers crossed we can get 3 positive results, and catch you on the flip side.
We've still got some really fun games this season as well. We've still got to go to Southampton, a place where I'd imagine they'd already be relegated by the time we're there, in a place where we relegated them 2 years ago. We've still got to host Chelsea. We've
Yeah.
still got to go to Brentford. Still got to host Everton, which will probably be a game where obviously they're safe and have almost nothing to play for, and we've maybe got something to play for. Hopefully we have something to play for. I still think Fulham are being overlooked. I still think we're the afterthought when it comes to the European race, which is insanity because we're like well in the mix. I haven't really listened to enough mainstream podcasts since the win against Forest to actually confirm whether that's true or not. But it does feel as though when you think of Europe, Fulham are not one of the first teams that are in contention when it comes to teams who could qualify for Europe outside of the Champions League. What a season it's been. Thank you so much for watching, listening, and just being a part of the Jack and Joe show this week. We'll be back in 2 weeks' time, and we might even be on the pod feed as well. Who knows? Thank you so much for watching. And Joe, thanks so much for being here.
Cheers, Jack. Thanks, everyone.
We will see you guys soon. Come on, Fulham. And this time in 2 weeks, we could be in a cup quarterfinal. Please.